live on both YouTube and on Facebook. We are trying something a little different this evening. So, welcome to a live chat with James here on both YouTube and Facebook Live. Feel free to place your comments into the comment sections. I'll jump back and forth between Facebook and YouTube to check out the comments as they come in. Generally, we do the live chat through a program called Riverside that streams it out to all of the different platforms at once. But we thought we would try this in a different format just to see how the connection works and to see how the interactivity is with our audience. Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that you can also call in live if you would like to call into the studio and discuss anything from the topics and the stories that we are discussing in the program. Through to your Aunt May's, delicious cookie recipe. By all means, give a call into the studio and say hello. The number for the studio here is 604-385-5093. Once again, the studio line is 604-385-5093. Feel free to call into the studio and discuss anything that comes to your mind. Now, tonight we are going to begin in our own backyard in Surrey, British Columbia, where a brazen shooting at a radio station is raising fears about organized crime and attacks on the press. We have the latest on the investigation there. Also ahead, Metro Vancouver, are they ready for the world? A new report warns of a massive accommodation crisis for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. And Airbnb thinks it has the answer. Across the border, the U.S. government officially grinds to a halt. We will touch on the shutdown, and then later in the show, we'll do a deep dive into what that means for millions of Americans. Global tensions are rising in the Middle East, and a new talent war is heating up as China tries to lure skilled workers away from the West. Now, we want to hear from you throughout the show. What story are you watching? The number to call is 604-385-5093. Feel free to call in at your leisure. Tonight, we are going to start with a story that has alarmingly close to home ties here. A local media outlet has become the target in what police are calling the latest chapter in a string of extortion attempts plaguing Metro Vancouver's South Asian business community. It's also potentially tied to the Lawrence Bishnoi gang as he controls his criminal empire on a global scale from a jail cell in India. There are reports and different intelligence agencies bringing in information that claims that Lawrence Bishnoi may actually be working as a proxy of the government of India, the Research and Analysis Wing, which is their intelligence agency, as well as other criminal involvement. Now, overnight on Monday, shots were fired at the Surrey studio of Swift Radio, 1200 a.m. Staff arriving for work Tuesday morning discovered the front door and surrounding walls riddled with bullets. Some of those bullets penetrated the exterior wall and struck a window of the broadcast studio itself. Swift Radio host and former MLA Ginny Sims pointed out the bullet holes, noting the shots were not random, she said. These shots were fired directly into a studio where the radio host sits. Over there, I would be sitting, she said. Fortunately, no one was inside of the building at the time of the shooting. Now, this incident is far more than a simple act of vandalism. It represents a convergence of a local crime wave and international organized crime, as well as a direct threat to freedom of the press in Canada. The investigation was immediately handed over to the newly formed Provincial Extortion Task Force, which explicitly links this shooting to a wave of similar cases. So far in 2025, Surrey police have opened up 48 extortion investigations, 29 of which have involved shootings. Investigators have connected many of these cases to the India-based Bishnoi gang, a group the Canadian federal government just recently officially declared a terrorist entity, and that happened just last week. Now, Ginny Sims believes her station was targeted precisely because of its outspoken coverage of these extortion cases and the Bishnoi gang. The attack, therefore, is seen as a clear attempt to intimidate and silence journalists. The community and its leaders are responding with defiance. In a powerful statement of resilience, Swift Radio went on the air with a live talk show the next day, a day they were originally scheduled to be closed, to prove they will not be silenced. The issue has also reached the highest levels of federal politics, with Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre raising the shooting in the House of Commons. However, let's face it, the little parrot of Pierre Poilievre, if it doesn't sound good on a bumper sticker, it's probably not going to make sense coming out of his mouth. However, police are asking any witnesses with dash cam footage in the area of 130th Street and 76th Avenue on Monday evening to please come forward. From one major challenge facing our region to another, the 2026 FIFA World Cup on the horizon. A new report is sounding the alarm that Metro Vancouver is facing a massive accommodation shortage. And bear with me a moment there, folks. I just noticed that we have the wrong screen on behind us. I do a series of different talk shows for different networks and different channels. Of course, Satledge TV, our friends at Satledge, we do a talk show with Angus Scott from London, England, every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So we get to bring perspectives on Sikh culture, Sikh news, and information of significance to that community. I'm just going to find the right screen here, folks. So bear with me as we pull it up. I just stream it on YouTube. Makes it easy. Play it in the background. But unfortunately, we got to go through all these different videos to find the right one. Now, of course, while we are doing this, let's pay attention to our episode sponsor. Yet once again, it's Carey Movers of Western Canada. Carey Movers is your local and long-distance choice in the Metro Vancouver and Fraser Valley region of British Columbia. Also for long-distance moves anywhere in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Northern Canada. For long-distance moves, contact Carey Movers through their website, www.careymovers.com. That's K-A-R-Y, movers.com. They will take care of you, and they are a locally owned and operated family business. So again, a great company to deal with, and thanks for their involvement again. Excuse me, let's take a look. Sorry, folks, I just had to jump over to our Facebook page to make sure I wasn't ignoring any comments coming in on that side either. Now, let's get back to the story about whether we are going to have enough accommodations for the FIFA World Cup in 2026. A report by Deloitte, which was commissioned by the short-term rental giant Airbnb, forecasts a significant lodging shortage during the games. It predicts a shortfall of approximately 70,000 night stays. This could translate into direct spending loss of about $45 million for Metro Vancouver, as visitors unable to find a place to stay take their money elsewhere. The report calculates the potential loss based on average visitor spend of $639 per night. As a preview of the chaos, the report points to the Taylor Swift concerts last December, which caused an estimated 260% spike in local hotel costs. During the World Cup, that increase could be over 200% as well. Now, unsurprisingly, Airbnb is positioning itself as a solution. Shocker, shocker. Now, as they go ahead with that, they are trying to position themselves as the solution for that. The company is using this report to lobby the provincial and municipal governments to temporarily loosen regulations on short-term rentals, making it easier for local residents to become hosts and absorb the massive influx of visitors. This sets up a classic conflict between the gig economy and a regulated industry, supercharged by a global mega event. The government has recently implemented stricter rules on short-term rentals to protect the already strained long-term housing market. Now it must decide whether to pause these protections for a temporary economic windfall. Premier David Eby remains non-committal while acknowledging the huge demand. He stressed what we can't do is displace people who work and deliver services in Vancouver to support those activities. The city of Vancouver has been more direct, stating it is not currently considering any changes to its short-term rental rules. This debate forces a difficult choice: prioritize the temporary tourist economy or protect the stability of the local housing market and the residents who depend on it. Now, from businesses under threat to a city bracing for a massive influx of people, navigating change in Metro Vancouver is a constant. If your business is navigating its own move, you need a team that understands the local landscape. Our sponsor, Carey Movers Limited, are the commercial and office movers of choice for many Greater Vancouver businesses. Find them online at www.careymovers.com. That's K-A-R-Y movers.com. Now, also on the local front today, hundreds of public sector workers marched through downtown Vancouver in a show of force. Members of the BC General Employees Union, or BCGEU, rallied to push for a new contract, escalating a job action that is now in its fifth week. The core of the dispute is wages. The union is demanding an 8% increase over 2 years, citing the severe affordability crisis in the province. The government, however, has offered 5%, pointing to what it calls a constrained fiscal position. Contract talks broke down on Monday, and the union said it will not return to the bargaining table until the province comes back with a real offer. To me, it would just make sense that being 3 points away for either side, if you split the difference and get your asses back to work, that would make sense to me. But again, I am not part of that union and a part of the dispute. And I actually went to cover some of the footage today of those that were protesting and picketing, or I shouldn't say protesting. They were picketing outside the Surrey Pretrial Services Center in Surrey, British Columbia. One of the union members that was on site tried to ask me for ID and insisted that I needed identification to film them in public while they picketed in order to prove who I am. And basically, I told him to pound sand, and that is definitely not a way to get the media on your side. However, that is neither here nor there. I think that it is important that people have the ability to afford to live in the cities in the province that they work, of course. And the government employees should be no different. But with that attitude, I can understand why they don't get more money. Now, for a look at stories making the news across the country. In Quebec, a shocking display of violence in a public space. A man with known ties to organized crime was gunned down in a busy Starbucks in Laval, a suburb of Montreal. The victim has been identified as Charalambos Thealagu. I probably butchered that name, but at least I didn't butcher him. Also known as Bobby the Greek. The two other people were seriously injured in the daylight shooting, which investigators say resembled a targeted professional hit, signaling ongoing and violent tensions within Canada's criminal underworld. Turning to politics, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith announced today that her government plans to formally apply to the Federal Major Projects Office for a new bitumen pipeline to the northern BC coast. Smith argued that the province must take the lead on the project because the private sector has been unable or unwilling to do so. I think it's important to note that it is a contentious issue, and of course, it is very difficult for pipelines and other investment in these big projects to come forward after the fiasco with the previous pipeline construction that the government and Canadian taxpayers ultimately had to purchase. And that has been completed and is operational, but again, it still puts some very nervous feelings out there for potential major investors in projects at that scale. Now in Ottawa, of course, we know that there is a lot going on, and whether or not it's dealing with that moron down south, in the White House, or whether it's dealing with the calls from certain Canadians who want to see Mark Carney tossed out of office, and just the craziness that goes on day to day in the world of politics. But again, we are seeing at least that Carney and his party is standing up to foreign interference and transnational repression on the side of India. They have publicly called out India once again for their involvement in transnational repression, in foreign interference, and ongoing cases that have not been made public yet, but they are using of course, the Hardeep Singh Nijjar case as a prime example of a transnational repression action by the government of India. And they have alluded to other murders and other criminal cases that are currently ongoing in the Canadian criminal justice system that may, in fact, be linked to the India government or their intelligence agency as well. So we'll keep our eyes on that. But at the very least, at least we know that they are taking these issues seriously and dealing with them in a very straightforward and public way. This was a question of many people who were concerned that as they moved forward to reinstate the high diplomatic positions, both in Canada and India, as they tried to reconcile and try to move forward with some diplomatic ties, people were worried about what those new appointments to the High Commission were going to translate into when it came to our safety and security and sovereignty. And it seems like those two are being kept separate and apart and dealt with on their own merits. So again, good to see that that's being brought forward. Now, from gang violence in Surrey to pipeline politics in Alberta, there are major forces shaping our country. We're taking your calls on what matters most to you. The number again, folks, is 604-385-5093. Give us a call and have your say. On a different note from our nation's capital, the Department of National Defense is marking the start of October with two key initiatives. The department is celebrating Women's History Month and is also launching Cyber Month 2025, an effort to promote digital security and awareness. Now, let's take a look around the world. Yes, headlines from around the globe. Our top international story today is the United States federal government officially being closed for business. The government entered a partial shutdown at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time after a deeply divided Congress failed to pass a funding bill. The White House issued a stark statement this morning, stating now yesterday morning, because we are after midnight here in the West Coast. But in any event, they made that statement yesterday morning saying that the layoffs of federal workers were imminent. We'll have a full breakdown of why this is happening and what it means for everyday Americans coming up later in the show. Meanwhile, a new front has opened in a global competition for talent. Effective today, China has launched a new K-visa category specifically designed to attract young international graduates in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And it is the so-called STEM fields. This move is widely seen as a direct challenge to the United States' H-1B visa program, particularly after the moron Donald Trump and his administration significantly hiked application fees. The key advantage of China's K-visa is that it eliminates the need for employer sponsorship, a major hurdle for many skilled workers hoping to move to the U.S. However, significant challenges remain for potential applicants, including language barriers and uncertainty about long-term residency and citizenship options in China. Now, of course, in the Middle East, tensions remain high. U.S. President Donald Trump has issued an ultimatum to Hamas, giving the group 3 or 4 days, government shutdown, maybe 7, maybe 8, maybe in 2 weeks, it's Trump. But anyway, he's given them 3 to 4 days to accept his administration's peace plan to end the war in Gaza. He warned that if they refuse, they will face a very sad end. This comes as the Israeli Navy intercepted another humanitarian aid flotilla that was attempting to break the blockade and reach Gaza. And of course, Donald Trump doesn't care because it's not carrying Big Macs and Diet Coke. Now, as we move on, finally, the world is mourning a true pioneer. World renowned primatologist and conservationist Jane Goodall has passed away at the age of 91. Her groundbreaking work with chimpanzees in Tanzania revolutionized our understanding of primates and, in doing so, changed how we see ourselves and our relationship with the animal world. She has had a remarkable life and an enduring legacy. She will never be forgotten for all of her work. Rest in peace to the dear Jane Goodall. Now, of course, we look again to life being full of major transitions. For some, it's a new career path in a new country. For others, it's a move to a new home across town or across the province. When your family is on the move, you want a smooth journey. Our sponsor, Carry Movers Limited, offers direct fleet moving services throughout BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and of course, the Yukon. Learn more at carrymovers.com. That's K-A-R-Y movers.com. Thank you to them for sponsoring yet another episode of Live Chat with James. All right, let's quickly recap our top stories here at home. A targeted shooting at a Surrey radio station is being investigated as part of a widespread extortion scheme with international ties. Metro Vancouver is facing a potential lodging crisis for the World Cup, and across the border, the U.S. government is shut down. When we come back, we're going to go beyond the headlines. The U.S. government is closed for business, but what does that exactly mean? Who gets to still go to work? Who doesn't get paid? And how does it affect everything from social security checks to food safety? Our in-depth breakdown of the U.S. shutdown is next, and we hope that you will stick around. If you'd like to have your say again, you're more than welcome to call into the live phone line. They are open now at 604-385-5093. Call in and have your say on any of the news stories we've touched on or anything else that comes to mind. By all means, you're welcome to call in and chat. Once again, 604-385-5093. Now, welcome back. Before the break, we told you the U.S. government has shut down. Now we're going to break down what that really means. This isn't a fight about how much government should spend overall. This is a high-stakes partisan battle over one specific and deeply divisive issue. The Epstein files. Oh, no, sorry, healthcare. We know the Epstein files are a part of every decision Trump makes because he doesn't want them out. But let's move on. This entire U.S. government is ground to a halt because Democrats refused to pass a temporary funding bill unless it included two key provisions. First, they demanded an extension of subsidies under the Affordable Care Act, or the ACA, which are set to expire. Without them, millions of Americans face massive increases in their health insurance premiums. Second, they wanted to reverse recent cuts to Medicaid, a health program for low-income Americans that were passed by the Republican majority earlier this year. Now, keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that not only do the Republicans control all levels of government at this point, it is important to also understand that the Republicans are falsely making it about providing health care to immigrants and to refugees and other illegals. This has nothing to do with nothing. They are using that as a smokescreen and a way to try and gaslight Americans to think that this is the real reason behind the shutdown, when in fact they are just deflecting the real issue, and that is the screwing of the low and middle income Americans out of their health insurance or increasing their premiums by up to 75%. And that's what it comes down to. In order to facilitate and keep the promises to the billionaires and the rich, Donald Trump is funding his tax cuts for the rich by screwing over the little man. And that's exactly what it comes down to. He wants to cut all of these programs in order to save money for those tax cuts. And that's what it comes down to. Instead, it's looking like if it was passed, it would screw hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of low-income Americans out of healthcare. That's what it comes down to. Now, Republicans who control the House and both houses of Congress, or the White House and both houses of Congress, have called these demands a non-starter. They accuse the Democrats of holding the entire government hostage in an attempt to expand what they call Obamacare. Now, let's also keep in mind that it was the Democrats that showed up before the official closure of the government and tried to work on getting things voted and passed and trying to find solutions. And the Republicans, well, you can only hear crickets coming from their part of the White House and of the Congress. So it shows the level of which the Republicans are trying to falsely accuse the Democrats of being responsible. Both sides, of course, are digging in, and it does take two sides to find solutions. So again, both sides need to get their ass in gear and try to find solutions for real Americans and stop playing games. And again, when we look at the racist and divisive attitude of the Trump administration, again, they don't care about everyday Americans, and if you can't feed Trump's ego or his wallet, plain and simple. A plurality of Americans, 38%, blame the Republicans for the shutdown, but 27% blame the Democrats, and another 31% say parties are equal to blame. It's a clear sign of widespread disgust with political gridlock. And let's face it, Donald Trump has come out publicly and stated that he would like the shutdown because then he can start laying off Democrat supporters and getting rid of a bunch of different employees and positions. So again, he was quoted as saying that they will not be able to bring those positions back once he eliminates them, and that is a benefit of the shutdown. So it appears that there may be a lot more behind the scenes in Trump's goal to shut down government. But beyond the political posturing in Washington, the shutdown has a very real and immediate human cost. To understand it, you need to know the difference between two types of federal workers: the furloughed and the accepted. Now, the furloughed are deemed non-essential. An estimated 750,000 to 800,000 of these federal employees have been sent home without a paycheck, and they won't be getting one in the near future. While Congress has historically passed legislation to give them back pay after a shutdown ends, that does nothing to help them pay the rent or buy groceries this week, creating immense financial hardship. Unfortunately, a lot of people out there don't have a lot of sympathy for government employees. They just assume, oh, you've got money and, the government employees, they'll be looked after. But that's not the case. Most of the government workers are, again, just working paycheck to paycheck to try and support their families and to put food on the table and to deal with inflation and to deal with housing costs. I mean, they have the same challenges as everybody else, and this is going to be a major hardship for those families. Now, as we look at this, of course, there are accepted or essential workers. These are people whose jobs are considered critical to protecting life and property. This includes active duty military personnel, FBI agents, air traffic controllers, TSA agents at the airport. They are all legally required to show up for work. But will they do so? We'll have to see, because they will not get paid until the shutdown is over. So they have to show up for work. They have to put out the expense of travel, of daycare, of all of these expenses, but they're not going to be paid until the shutdown is over, which presents a whole other colossal list of problems. Now, the shutdown comes with a new unprecedented threat that makes it far more serious than previous ones. In the past, shutdowns were seen as a temporary disruption. This time, the Trump administration is explicitly threatening permanent mass layoffs. The White House has directed agencies to prepare reduction in force notices, which is the formal government term of firing people and eliminating their jobs. Again, another way in which Trump can save money to pay off and to reward the tax breaks he promised his rich friends. Now, it isn't just a negotiating tactic, it's a broader agenda. The administration has already overseen the departure of some 300,000 federal workers through a government efficiency campaign. President Trump himself confirmed the strategy, saying we can do things during the shutdown that are irreversible, like cutting vast numbers of people, cutting them right out. This transforms the shutdown from a temporary political fistfight into a powerful tool to fundamentally and permanently reshape the U.S. federal government, bypassing the normal legislative process and leaving hundreds of thousands of workers fearing not just for their next paycheck, but for their entire careers. So, how does this affect the average person? Here's a look at the status of some of the key federal services. Social Security and Medicare will be operational. Payments continue as normal. Customer service and new applications will face significant delays, though. The U.S. Postal Service will be operational. Mail is unaffected as it's independently funded. Military and law enforcement, active duty military, FBI, TSA, and Border Patrol remain on the job but will not be getting their paychecks. National parks are partially accessible. Open air areas may be accessible, but visitor centers, restrooms, and services are closed. Risk of damage and safety issues due to a lack of staff. Now, the WIC nutrition program or WIC nutrition program at immediate risk. Federal funding runs out quickly, threatening access to food and formula for low-income women, infants, and children. Student loans and Pell Grants, operational but reduced. Payments will be dispersed, but the staff needed to process applications and resolve issues are furloughed, causing major delays. In terms of the Food and Drug Administration, it is halted. What a shocker. Once again, food safety inspections are paused. Reviews for new drugs are delayed. Who knew that was coming? Now, it is a sad state, and it unfortunately doesn't stop with government services. The shutdown sends a shockwave through the entire U.S. economy. Economists estimate that each week the government remains closed will shave between 0.1 and 0.2% percentage points from the quarterly GDP growth. That translates into a direct economic hit of about $7 billion every week. Let's not also forget that it will have an impact on the stats and the Statistics Bureau and the Bureau of Labor Statistics and others. And that, of course, will mean that the release of critical data like the monthly jobs report and consumer price index for inflation will be delayed. So Trump will use that, of course, to say there's no inflation because, of course, they can't report on it. Now, this creates a perilous situation. The U.S. Federal Reserve, the country's central bank, has repeatedly stated that its decision on interest rates are data dependent. The shutdown effectively puts a blindfold on the Fed at a precarious moment for the economy, which is already showing signs of weakness and facing inflation risks from the trade tariffs. Without reliable data, the Fed, investors, and business leaders are left operating in the dark, dramatically increasing the risk of a policy mistake that could have far more damaging and long-lasting consequences than the shutdown itself. It injects a profound and dangerous level of uncertainty into the heart of the U.S. financial system. In times of economic uncertainty, families and businesses need to plan carefully. Unexpected costs are the last thing anybody needs. If a move is in your future, you need a company with transparent pricing and no hidden fees. Our sponsor, Carry Movers Limited, prides itself on accountability, aiming to complete every move on time and on budget. So you can plan your move at carrymovers.com. That's www.karymovers.com. Now, to sum it up, a political fight over healthcare has led to immediate financial pain for hundreds of thousands of workers and a dangerous level of uncertainty for the entire U.S. economy. We're still taking your calls on this and other topics that we brought up at 604-385-5093. What are your thoughts on the shutdown? Now, let's go to a potential trade showdown and shutdown. Yes, Donald Trump says he'll impose a 100% tariff on all foreign made movies to bring Hollywood production back home. It's a genius move to protect American jobs, or is it more likely just another bluster of hot air that's logistically impossible? Let's break that down and take a look at that a little closer. Now, in our final segment tonight, we're looking at the bold and many would say bizarre new trade threat from US President Donald J. Trump, the Epstein best friend. Now, in a post on his Truth Social platform, Donald Trump declared that the American movie making business has been stolen from the United States of America by other countries, just like stealing candy from a baby. To solve this, he announced he would be imposing a 100% tariff on any and all movies that are made outside of the United States. The stated goal is to stop the so called runaway production of films to countries like Canada, the UK, Australia, and others, which offer generous tax incentives to lure Hollywood studios. Now, the announcement made huge headlines, but according to a wide consensus of industry experts, trade lawyers, and even filmmakers, the proposal is, well, for all practical purposes, impossible to implement. It's a textbook example of applying a simplistic 20th century manufacturing based solution to a complex 21st century digital service economy. Here's what it's being dismissed, or why it's being dismissed as political hot air. First, there's the service versus goods problem. Tariffs are taxed on physical goods that cross a border. But when a US studio films a movie in Vancouver, it's purchasing a service. The final product, the movie itself, is intellectual property that is often transmitted globally across all different countries. Now, there is no shipping container full of movies arriving at a port to be taxed. Legal experts say there is no clear authority or mechanism to apply a traditional tariff in this way. Second, the proposal completely ignores the globalized nature of modern filmmaking. It's nearly impossible to define where a movie is made anymore. A blockbuster film might be shot in Canada, have its visual effects created by a team in India, be edited in the United Kingdom, and scored by a composer in Germany, a US studio. As Bollywood director Kabir Khan put it, I have no idea what he means. Every second Hollywood film is shot outside of the USA. You can't put a tariff on a product with no single country of origin. And third, even if a way could be found to implement it, the economic blowback would be catastrophic for the very industry Trump claims to be protecting. International markets account for 70% of Hollywood's total box office revenue. The US runs a massive trade surplus in entertainment. Imposing such a tariff would almost certainly violate World Trade Organization rules and invite immediate, devastating, retaliatory tariffs for countries on American made films. One trade analyst warned this policy could cook the golden goose that's laying the golden egg. It would cripple Hollywood's biggest source of profit in an attempt to solve a much smaller problem. So that's why the reaction from Hollywood has been, well, largely it's been a mix of confusion and collective eye rolling. Studio executives have described themselves as flummoxed and shocked, with most expressing deep skepticism about the plan's feasibility. Interestingly, the industry, including powerful unions like the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, or IATSE, actually agrees with Trump that foreign competition is a threat. But their proposed solution is the polar opposite of his. Instead of punitive tariffs, they have been lobbying for years for a federal production tax incentive, a carrot, not a stick, to a level playing field, and make it more financially attractive for studios to produce films at home. The overwhelming consensus in the entertainment world is that this tariff threat is not a serious policy proposal. It's seen as political bluster, designed to generate headlines and appeal to a base of voters concerned about job losses, but with no viable path to ever becoming reality. And let's face it, it also took attention away from the Epstein files for another 2 minutes, but I'm not going to let you forget about those. Now, as we have talked about the 100% tariff, and while the talk itself makes for a dramatic headline, the reality is that it's a logistical and legal non starter. Hollywood seems to agree that the real answer to keeping productions at home lies in incentives, not in penalties. That's all the time we have for tonight on Live Chat with James. My sincere thanks to our sponsor for this episode, Carey Movers Limited. Whether you're moving a home, an office, or even a piano, you can find them at www.karymovers.com. Yes, that's karymovers.com. Thanks to everyone who called in tonight. Well, the phones were actually silent, so we'll say thanks to those who thought about it. But we'll be back next week with more stories and more of your calls. Have a good night. Don't forget that tomorrow night you can find me at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on Lethbridge, Alberta's Jess TV and Jess FM. We will be talking about the Lethbridge upcoming civic elections as well as news stories to update you in the Lethbridge region, Alberta, and around the world, of course. So don't forget, Jess FM, tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. The phone lines again will be open, so hopefully you'll find the time to call in. Take care, everyone. Stay safe and have a great day.